I would like to highlight and to make a brief introduction about DESIS and the two main aspects that sign what is the DESIS network approach. The first one is an approach on capabilities, so to see development expansion of people capabilities, and the well-being depend on people are capable of doing and being. That is a very well-known approach that came from Amartya Sen. And what does it mean in design education for us? Bringing in a capability approach to development based on the human being. That capability is an enabling and empower proposition, and then the idea is how design can expand these people capabilities, that design is serving to this action. Another issue that is signing the work in DESIS, and I'm doing this as an introduction, is the issue of intersubjectivity, that two forms, then how can we manage and design interactions between people, and as you know, is a network of design for social innovation. So the social innovation as a way of people to design new way of people interact with each other. So the issue of intersubjectivity is very highlighted as an issue for us to work with. So we take in consideration, this is a philosopher, Martin Buber, that he talked about two forms of encounters that may use it to guide design practices and theory, and what to regard the quality of relationships. That is something that we need to consider very well when we are dealing with design for social innovation. One thing, and this may seem a little bit spiritual or transcendent, that is I-thou or I-you encounter. That when people have a meeting that go beyond definitions, classifications, rules, prejudices that people have with each other. And he called it the I-thou encounter. And amazingly, this author said also that we can have this kind of encounter with nature. And he had the tale of his encounter with a tree. He said, we can describe a tree as his qualities, what the tree means, classify, cut, use, but all in a sudden, he said, you can have a true encounter with this tree. And this he classifies an I-thou encounter. Otherwise, this author said that we can have a kind of I-it encounters, that the same names say what kind of encounter this means. This means encounters when people are organized, classified as the same as it can happen with a tree. People can be used, can be disposed, can be whatever, and can be planned or organized. So they are not, he don't say the I-it encounter as something negative, necessarily, because we cannot have these I-thou encounters all the time, but this gives us a kind of guidelines on how to deal with interactions and encounters, human and human nature. So this seems very philosophical, but what does it mean in design education? This is important to educate students to deal with the quality of interpersonal encounters in design practices, design for services, design for enabling solutions, design for vulnerability. And vulnerability is usually seen as a bad quality. Yes, I'm vulnerable to other, but in this approach, it can be also seen as openness to the encounter to the other. I'm opening for encountering you. I'm opening to the nature. So it's very important to deal with the interpersonal relations in personal life and context of living and working. And design education can, and design for social innovation can and should take care on how we educate students to understand the quality of the relationships of what they are designing. DESIS network, this is a premise that I would like to share with you. DESIS network has 10 years now. It's a long way. And we had a lot of experiences, research, education activities, and developing and understanding these two approaches. Of course, DESIS is a large network of 50 design schools all over the world. Of course, there are many other things happening in the network, but if I look forward, if I look behind of what we have done so far, these two approaches seem to me very important to bring it in today. So, it's very interesting that I have been invited to talk today about future of design education in emerging countries. I'm coming from Brazil. I'm based in Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And we are in DESIS discussing right now this issue. Challenging places. Challenging places. This is a picture of my city in Rio de Janeiro. This is Ipanema, or very nearby Copacabana. And you can see how we need to deal with this contrast in our everyday. Some countries have slums or areas outside the city, but in Rio de Janeiro, for many reasons, we have this intertwined in the urban every day. So we are just passing through the cities and navigating in these contrasts. I'm taking the example, of course, of my city to share with you. And this is an author, a Brazilian author, that call it broken cities. The city is split in two separate realities, segregating social class, neighborhoods, and cultural groups into increasingly limited interaction. How this can be considered in design education? As professor, I see in everyday life, my students, I'm in a public university, they come from everywhere. They come from every part of this spectrum. And I need to deal with this inside my classes, but I need to deal with this also in the projects I developed, I promote and organize in the city. So that's what I would like to share with you today and to make some reflections. And I said it's an ongoing conversation. So I bring in an example from Rio de Janeiro. What does it mean, the challenging places and design dealing with challenging places in practice? And I would like to share you a small example, from my everyday life there. This is for my Rio, the lab we have in Rio, because there's a network and organized in local labs, and we have a DESIS lab in our university. So this is one of the projects we developed there. And I have said, developing capabilities and interpersonal relations in a neighborhood of Rio de Janeiro. This is a square in this neighborhood that is called Grajaú in the city of Rio. And we propose to students to go to this square in some phases, go out to the public space. And very interesting in this challenge is that it should be the neighborhood where they live. So how design students can confront himself as designer with the context and the challenging place where he himself is inserted in. So take action, defining, prototyping, collaborative services with the peers in the neighborhood. Keep running a defined program, and very important, to act and celebrate and close. That is an exit strategy. So not to leave the community just like there. And this is some pictures of the students in the square. So it seems very nice, and we have this group that's collecting stories of the neighborhood with old people, people that are just telling stories and placing in this public space to make recognition of their own neighborhood and what is going on. So each one can tell a story, and the next week the story is there, so the neighborhood can know who they are, their own story. This is for kids to play, understand more about sustainability. They need to pass through all these small squares to arrive, and this is in Portuguese, sustainable world. So they needed to answer each question to arrive and say, you are very ready to live in this sustainable world. So kids are invited to answer questions, to pass through each square of this drawing. And we have interactions with old people, and so it's a nice, this is a garden that is being structured in this square. This is our students interacting with local people. This is a kind of game, as in Brazil we always have to have some football or related things, and the kids are just playing with this ball, and it's a good connection also for them. This is getting connection with all the people in the place. But it seems a very happy story in a public space, and you know, it could be everywhere. There's a nice square, but public spaces are meeting places. So, you know, this small kid seated here, and he's there, and he's not taking part of our story. He's just going around, looking, but they are not really taking part. And the students are there, and we said, how could we integrate really everybody? How this square could be a real meeting place for all groups in the city? But you know, my students are not. They can have a lot of prejudices, they can be afraid, they can have a lot of challenges to deal with these people. So we have this happy story happening, you know? And we have this guy here, and he's not taking part of the party, the design project. And you know, in another experience we have in another square, this is happening amazing thing that we enact some plays with the kids, and there were some kids that don't want to play because they said, this is not my group. I not belong to this group. But this is our students trying, you know, to introduce them. And something very interesting happened in this square that in the end they play. And this is some small victory, some small, really humble act, but it was very meaningful for the students and for our group to say that because parents could be very afraid to let the kids play with these kids, but somehow it worked. So it was a time when I see design really having, not theory, but in fact, in everyday life, a small transformative and very effective action to really make interpersonal relations happen, interactions happen in a meaningful way. This is our student, Ingrid, with the kids and parents and everybody were together. But our everyday life is about exclusion and fear. You see these guys, like looking these guys. So this is a way to see how can we, as Designer for Social Innovation group, take this challenge as a design focus for our activities. It's a huge challenge in these challenging places. We are starting to learn how to do that. These small things are helping us to understand, and we hope to start this activity. So, the challenge place, I take this example, and maybe we can in the discussion talk of other places you live, and each place have different challenges. These are our challenges as example. And I start to reflect with my colleagues in DESIS, what will be the possibilities for design education in this process? Develop projects to students in interface areas. I call it in this way, public space on which different socioeconomic groups interact. So we usually say, okay, I pick up a group of students, put in a car, on a bus, on a flight, and I open up in a slum. I did it once, and it was not good. For many reasons, because people see this group of students that came from high income or medium income classes, university educated, and here they look at him and said, I will never be in university. What they are doing here? So I did it once, and I didn't do this anymore. So I said, let's go to interface places on which the groups meet, and let's work there. And in each neighborhood, each student live, there are places of interface, because they will be working on where they live and what they can be also educated as citizens to be an active actor to transform the city and the reality on where we live. This micro scale of interpersonal interactions that we used to call, I don't have time to go further on that, collaborative and relational services, is the way we are doing this micro scale of integrating the kid that was excluded in our idea. This micro scale are very, and someone can, very important, and someone can say, what is the impact? Let's see. And maybe we can connect all these micro initiatives in something meaningful, but let's start off something that is live. And now I recall Buber and what he said, I do, I too, I-you relations. And the other approach is to develop people capabilities. What is the capabilities, or how can we create opportunities for everybody involved? It's a mutual learning process on which we started to overcome prejudice, to promote empathy, and to create new connections. And of course, as I have anticipated, these small micro initiatives does not mean that they cannot one day be connected in something transformative, and does not mean that they can be examples for others to take part on, and so on and so forth. And the hope is to nurture a new generation of designers that work with governments and other actors to develop these solutions by training them in their neighborhoods. So we could have a scenario in which governments could really have this team of designers working at a local level and make these micro-scale initiatives one day, but we need to start from somewhere, and somewhere is just to have the opportunity to bring students there to learn and to experiment what does it mean to nurture and to be in these interactions.